thought it would be useful to just this morning, in a very brief and concise manner, separate fact from fiction. So I'm just going to go through 4 false claims that you have heard over and over and over, and just explain once more what the simple truth is. Meredith, let me see the first slide here. Here's the first one. The obviously false claim of the Democrats is that Republicans have closed the government. I've heard them say this myself. You've all seen it in interviews. They're blaming the shutdown on the Republicans, and it is patently absurd. The next slide will show you the simple fact, the obvious fact that everyone can see. It is Republicans who have voted to open the government 14 times. Now, remember how this came about. Back in September 19th in the House, Republicans in the House voted to open the government, the clean continuing resolution to keep everything in operation. Every Democrat except one in the House voted to close the government. But we still passed it because we have the majority. And so we sent that bill over to the Senate. And 13 different occasions, 13 times, the Democrats have voted to close the government. Republicans voted yes every time to open it. Republicans in the Senate and the House voted to keep the lights on, to pay service members and our troops who are in harm's way, Border Patrol agents, TSA, air traffic controllers, all federal workers. They voted to ensure that women, infants, and children nutrition programs continue and that SNAP benefits continue to go to the American families who are in need. But by contrast, the Democrats have voted no every single time. And what is outrageous to us is that they have gone onto the Senate floor. Senate Democrats, they have voted no. They have voted to close the government. And then they have gone out to the hall, to the nearest camera they can find. And they have looked into the lens and said, Republicans are shutting down the government. It makes no sense. It's the most extreme example of gaslighting in the history of American politics. And many in the media have allowed them to get away with that. It's shameful. Let me show you another obviously false claim. Obviously false claim number 2 of the Democrats is that Republicans are being unreasonable. Well, here's the fact. Let me see the next one. The fact is very simple. Republicans are refusing to accept the Democrats' outrageous demands. Now, why do we say that? Now, remember, the Republicans passed a clean continuing resolution. It was nonpartisan. It was a simple bill that would open the full government, and we could do that today. If they would pass that today, with 0 strings attached, everything would be flowing again and the government would work. Importantly, remember that we offered that CR in good faith. And why do we say that? Because it was offered after a bipartisan, bicameral negotiation between both chambers. Because you see, you had the appropriators, Republican and Democrat appropriators, who got together and decided they agreed on the need for a short-term CR so that they could continue their negotiations on the full-year funding bills. But this is something Democrats have spoken passionately about and acted upon many times in the past. We've recounted here every day. 13 different occasions in the Biden administration, they passed continuing resolutions. They did it most recently in March of this year when Chuck Schumer, 10 Senate Democrats, including the leader, Schumer, voted for the CR and told us how important that was. The CR that's on the table right now and has been sitting there for 45 days is nearly identical to the one that they voted on in March. But shockingly, this is the big thing. In addition to their refusal to support the CR and reopen the government, the Democrats have had the audacity to also demand something new. They demanded $1.5 trillion with a T in new spending obligations in exchange for the simple funding resolution. They filed on paper in the Senate record back in September, and it still sits there as their counterproposal. They would spend $1.5 trillion of your taxpayer funds. Included in that is nearly $200 billion of taxpayer funds that they want to use to restore free health benefits to illegal aliens. They want to spend billions in wasteful left-wing spending projects in foreign countries on things like LGBTQ plus awareness in the Horn of Africa, all sorts of things. I could give you a long list, and we've said it here before. They want to spend $500 million to prop up left-leaning news organizations. And shockingly, in that same proposal, as their ransom for reopening the government, they want to cut $50 billion from the Rural Hospital Fund that the Republicans just got signed into law on July 4th. That is the bill that they filed that shut down the government. And every American can see that for themselves. So their claim about Republicans being responsible is laughable. Let me go to the third one. False claim number 3, Democrats are fighting for health care. You've heard this over and over and over. Let me say something very simply about this false claim. It is the Democrats who created Obamacare. It is the Democrats who did that without any Republican votes. It's the Democrats who, by extension, have cost the American taxpayers and people who have health insurance have made their costs skyrocket. It is their policies that made that happen. And so instead of reforming it, the Democrats don't reform Obamacare. They want to subsidize it. They want to spend more taxpayer dollars. That, by the way, goes mostly to insurance companies, which makes the cost rise further. That's the Democrats' plan. When they passed Obamacare in 2010, they called it the Affordable Care Act. We know the truth is exactly the opposite. By some estimates, premiums have risen 60% in many categories since they passed that bill into law. Now, the fact is the opposite. Republicans are the ones fighting to save health care. Why? It's not just talking points to us. We do this. We have ideas, and we have already implemented ideas and measures to reduce costs, increase access and quality, and eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse. Now, why do we say it's not just a talking point? Why do we say the Republican Party is the only one advancing common sense reform solutions? Because we've proven it. We did that in the big, beautiful bill, the Working Families Tax Cut. We took a look at Medicaid, and we took on that challenge. We took action to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse in Medicaid. We got able-bodied young men without dependents off the program. We got illegal aliens off the program, and we saved $185 billion just to start. We got millions of ineligible enrollees off the program, and it preserved it. It strengthened Medicaid for the people who rely upon it, which is the elderly, disabled, and young pregnant women, as we always use as an example. No, it's not about health care. That is a false claim, and everybody knows it. Everyone in America, and certainly everybody in this room, understands that this is about something else. What this is about fear. The Schumer shutdown was never about health care. That's a distraction. It's a red herring, as we used to say in debate club. Okay? This is about fear. And what is the fear? The resolution on the COVID-era Obamacare subsidy issue was always going to be slated for debate in October, November, and December. Everybody knows that, and every Democrat knows that. It's an issue that's too complex to be solved on a short-term funding measure like a CR. They know that very well. This is about fear. Everybody in the country is watching the elections that will happen tomorrow. You got big elections in New Jersey and Virginia, the governor's races and attorney general's races, et cetera. But all the attention is focused primarily on New York City. Why? Because the fear that Mamdani and all that he represents will be risen to power, that he'll be elected the mayor of America's largest city, the once cradle of capitalism, that we're going to have a Marxist, a communist running the largest city. Now this terrifies the establishment old guard Democrats in Washington. And the leaders of both chambers are among those most terrified. They're both from New York. Leader Hakeem Jeffries is the Democrat in the House, and Leader Schumer in the Senate. They're both from New York, and they're terrified. You've watched their actions carefully. Many of you have not reported on it enough. Poor Hakeem Jeffries had to finally, he was forced to endorse Mamdani. And he's terrified that he now owns the results of that. Chuck Schumer's been dancing around the issue, but he knows he's darned if he does, darned if he doesn't. They're both terrified, and so that is the fear. This is a fact, and you should print it this way. The Schumer and Jeffries and their colleagues fear political retribution from the far-left activists in their party more than they fear the consequences of keeping the government closed for weeks on end. They fear that personally for their own political future, and they care more about that than they care about SNAP benefits flowing to hungry families, about air traffic controllers being paid so they can keep the skies safe, Border Patrol troops, and all the rest. It pales in comparison, and this is a simple summary that is a simple fact. It is extremism on the left that is the direct cause of American suffering right now. One more fact. The obviously false claim number 4 this morning is that Republicans are responsible for all this pain. It's just a nonsensical statement. It's a nonsensical statement because the fact is very clear. This is about math. Republicans need at least 7 Democrats to join us. We only have 53 Republicans in the Senate. It takes 60 votes to reopen the government in the Senate. The House did its job September 19th. We're waiting on the Senate to get this done. Leader John Thune and the Republicans have bent over backwards. They've done everything they can. You saw his frustration and his anger boil up on the floor at the end of last week. A normally calm, pretty steady leader, very steady leader. We're all angry about this because we're sick of what they're doing. They're using the American people as pawns, as leverage, and that is the word that so many of them have used. We could name senator after senator, House member after House member, from the leadership ranks all the way down to rank and file on the Democrat side. They have admitted openly they're using the American people as leverage in this political game. They're motivated out of fear. They want to show a fight to the radical left so they don't lose their political seats, and they're willing to make the American people suffer for it. That is the fact. This is about math. Republicans have to have at least 7 Democrats. We need 5 more. 5 more moderate, centrist, common sense people who care more about the constituents they serve and the country that they supposedly serve than their own political futures and the retribution they'll receive from the Marxist, Mamdani, communist left in the party if they do the right thing here. I wish these weren't the facts. I take no pleasure in telling you this. It is disgusting to us. But there's no other way to candy coat this, to make it any prettier than it is. So we're now entering the 5th week of this Democrat shutdown, and it's for one reason. Democrats made a deliberate choice to keep the government closed. The shutdown will only end when those same Democrats make a deliberate choice to open it. The entire country is calling and waiting on just 5 more Senate Democrats to come to their senses and do the right thing. We are pleading with them to do so. This is not a game.